Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
A very good morning. Thank you so much for keeping it on UBC TV, Inspiring Uganda. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda Extra with me, Sharon Chondja. A beautiful Monday. Looks sunny. We hope that's how the day gets to end and we won't have rain, I guess, in Kampala. Now, today in studio, we get to discuss about intellectual property. The Agenda 2030 is quite an ambitious one that is meant to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people live in peace and prosperity. IP, intellectual property, has been noted as a critical incentive for innovation and creativity, and to also contribute to the success of the Sustainable Development Goals when it comes to different countries. Now, to discuss more on this is Mr. Edgar Tabaro, a lawyer, senior partner with KTA Advocates, and he was a part of the just concluded symposium that was discussing this, the fourth industrial revolution, and so much more. So we get into the details of that discussion right about now. A very good morning, Mr. Tawara.
Good morning,
How
Sharon.
are you?
Pleasure being here.
You just concluded the KTA Symposium about intellectual property and so much more. Can you just give us a recap?
That's right. KTA annual symposium on intellectual property and the fourth industrial revolution is an event we host every year on the 20th and the 21st of October. It's a two-day event. It draws from many persons with interest in intellectual property. The persons we style as development partners, UN, government, captains of industry. When I talk of captains of industry, I really mean the high-end folks that are pushing things
in the driving seat.
And we also get young innovators. Young innovators. Some of the big partners in it, I must mention, who support us in this: the Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Science and Technology. NSSF is a very big partner in it. SSF put $10 million an innovation fund to support startups, to support young innovators. KTA Advocates, the partners are committed to this initiative. Myself, I taught intellectual property at university. I published widely on it. My other partner, Kenneth Muhanji, is as well my former student, by the way, for intellectual property. Edwin Tabaro is a litigator in this area. So it's a subject that is very close to us, and KTA Advocates have put resources to give pro bono services for startups, young innovators, people who are either still at university or freshly out of school and do not have monies to pay for registration of their businesses and protection of their creativities, their creative initiatives. So we started it 4 years ago, and it's grown in leaps and bounds. The one we had last Thursday and Friday was held at Munyonyo, and there were great conversations there, great initiatives, and more importantly, we had stalls of young people showcasing their products. Apps, applications based on things we think as mundane, but very critical. Say motherhood, mother care. You have an app which you use to monitor your child, the safety of the child. Now these days we leave children with maids. Many of our children, because of the hustle and bustle of work, we leave children at home. So you have an app that monitors, that even gives indications when the child is supposed to breastfeed, when the child is supposed to have their hamper removed, changed. I mean, I don't want to go into advertising for that, but things as critical as that. So we had such persons showcasing their innovations.
There are not so many lawyers that are actually into IP. And you happen to be one of those that took that route. So it's commercial, land, or any others. I'm just wondering why you decided to.
It's passion. It's mainly driven by passion. Quite frankly, it's not it's not one that pays. It's not one that pays.
Even now? Because the times have changed and it just seems like it might be one of those that now might
surprisingly, the if you look at the receipts that we have, the biggest payments are from applications abroad. People coming to protect their intangible assets, their intellectual property in Uganda, mainly trademarks, and they do it as a protectionist measure for them to gain market entry. And that is the disparity that made us take this initiative to do an annual conference, so as to promote awareness among Ugandan people, and importantly so for policymakers,
yes,
to awaken. No, I'm not suggesting they are asleep, but what would be the word, to mainstream the knowledge economy in the knowledge economy in our national development programs. The biggest challenge, the challenge we face time and again, is that the knowledge economy, there's a disjuncture. The knowledge economy is not really mainstreamed in our development programs, and as such, knowledge is not commodified in Uganda.
Yes.
We treat knowledge as just like one of those maybe public goods, and there's no incentive for people to engage in innovation, apart from maybe academics.
Yes.
People at university doing research, scientific research at university. Yeah.
Interesting. You talked about pro bono for startups.
Yes.
Is that, did you realize that was a big issue and these people needed protection, but they didn't know what they were doing?
You know, and that's for those who are aware anyway. There are those who are not even aware. Many of, startups, you can imagine the registrations. A lawyer could charge. There are lawyers in South Africa where I schooled for my graduate studies and where I learned my intellectual property more deeply. Typical patent lawyers will charge up to $1,000 per hour, but that cost is not there for them. And we've had people do serious innovations and patents that have been registered by KTA. One of them is Jaguza, by a young gentleman called Katumba. Jaguza is an app. It was actually the first application, tech app that was patented from Uganda. It's internet and of things. The interaction between the virtual world and the internet, big data and the real world. So you are fixed, cheap on an animal if you're saying engaged in ranching, and you're able to monitor the movement, even disease, feeding, immunizations and other interventions, whether it's interaction with weather in real time, and you're able to monitor what is on your ranch. So it's the Jaguza. It was a patent was registered on it. We were part of that processes. Then there's the Janzi, the Janzi Vado Sewachirianga,
yes,
a musician.
Yes.
Yeah. We registered a patent for him. We got protection for him for his musical instrument. The first musical instrument to be given awarded a patent in Africa. And it was so difficult to find a patent examiner within the World Intellectual Property Organization. They had to get a retired person based in Brazil and had long, gotten into a different life, but because I was an expert on musical instruments, and it took turnaround time has been 6 months, which is good for us. And for young people, you young people are always in a hurry.
Yes.
You're always in a hurry. So it's quite frankly, unless young people are supported, unless persons in vantage positions step out of our comfort zones and come to help young people, we'll be doing a disservice, because we can't all leave it to government. I don't want to sound out wrong politics on the show, but government is very slow. People in government are not quick to catch up with the developments in the world. They're always lagging behind. So it's very critical that the private sector people in the private sector, like ourselves, like KT advocates, step out of their comfort zones and come to lend a hand in these aspects.
Okay. Now I know we just jumped into intellectual property and all, and the issues and the symposium. But what is really intellectual property and the forms? You talk about patent, which seems like it's one that maybe comes out more. What happens to the others?
Oh yeah, because we're dealing with tech. We are dealing with tech here, but broadly, intellectual property is what they call intangible assets or creations of the mind, and could be compositions like songs, hymns. Could be dancing moves, could be drum beats, it could be poetry, ichivuko in my Kinyarwanda language.
Yeah.
It could be, they call it a bitontome in Uganda.
Yes.
Those are creations of the mind. It could be branding. I mean, everywhere you are, you come across brands. I'm certain, Sharon, when you go shopping for apparel, for clothing,
yes.
you look out for the brands. There are brands, I think, even for phones. I see you're carrying an iPhone. It's a brand that attracted you.
Yes.
That's intangible asset, and there are many young people involved in creating brands. I've seen many of these advertising agencies, all that stuff they do there. The products they do are subject of intellectual property. The seats on which we are occupying this morning are designs. The designs are subject to design protection. Think of anything that we are doing this morning. Even this show itself, is copyright.
Yes.
Yeah, it's copyright. The producer, the cameraman there. But unfortunately for you, this is for your employer, Uganda Broadcasting Corporation.
Yes.
And there have been cases of your archives. Well, that's a matter for another time, because I worked here as a managing director, and it's a long story, but intellectual property is really the intangible creations of the mind. And the bit about creation of the minds is that you do not need heavy capital outlay to roll out your idea. I mean, if you're doing tech, if you are designing digital codes to come up with apps, technology platforms, uploading to the technology platforms, you don't need a square mile of land. So you don't need $1 billion. You don't need a million bob for you to, maybe $1 million bob for registration and what have you, which now KTA and National Social Security Fund, that gap is being bridged. So I'd encourage young people really to step up, and because we all involved in some kind of creation. Even your writings, authorship is protected. And unfortunately for us, we don't commodify knowledge. We sit back and let it be. The compilations of your shows, that is intellectual property. You upload them on YouTube. YouTube pays for these things. You're aware, YouTube pays for these things. Written articles, compile them into a book. Tamale Mirundi. Everything he says on television now he reduces into writing. And he started his audience. 50-page books, not these voluminous 400 pages. And they sell big.
Yes.
Yeah, so
that's intellectual property.
That's intellectual property. Intellectual property is creations of the mind.
Now, there are different forms. I think one of the ones that really sounds in Uganda, maybe that's because so many people are very creative, is the copyright issue. It's always, copyright. I made a song. I think there's even a time Bobby Wine sued Electoral Commission for using his song in 2016.
In that matter.
For using his song without his permission.
They settled.
Yes, and they settled.
Well, the other big names I think we've been involved in is who's this gentleman? The guy who does very good Amulembe Gwani. I forget that.
The musicians.
The musician, the young musician. He's now based in the Netherlands. No.
Not sure.
Now based in the Netherlands. If he's watching, he's going to kick me hard because we interacted for very long. Sure. It's mobile telecom companies used to use their tunes for ringback tunes.
Yes.
And doing the mathematics, there was some bit of money involved. Because every time you download the tune, I think you pay, how much is it? 600 shillings at the time.
I'm not sure. I don't
So
have that
ideally, the musician should be gaining from that, and we've had enforcement, we've had court proceedings in that regard. Bobby Wine, like I told you, yeah, sure.
Okay. What are some of the gaps in existing legislation and policies relating to science, technology, and innovation?
If you are looking for gaps in legislation, I think you'd be going on a goose chase, because we have been involved in reform since 1991, when we first enacted the Patents Act and the Uganda Investment Code. Well, at that time it was called the Patent Statute, but now we have the Industrial Property Act, which makes an attempt to what would the word be? One, modify, rather bring all intellectual property aspects in relation to patents or innovations under the same act, update it. I was involved in those discussions. I remember addressing the Committee of Parliament, chaired by Tashovi at the time. Now at the Electoral Commission, he was chairperson, I think, of the Parliamentary and Legal Committee that handled that act. Todong was, before he became Minister without portfolio, he was on the same committee. Fox Odoy, I remember, Sarah Mateche, Medad Segona. I addressed them on policy aspects to include in the act, particularly the powers of the minister. So if you're looking for laws, if you're looking for gaps in the laws, there are no gaps there.
Everything is set.
Everything is in there. Your rights, your obligation, everything is in there, and remedies. The disjuncture is that people don't come up forward to enforce their rights.
Why do you think so?
One, it could be lack of awareness. That's the major handicap. And generally, Ugandans don't enforce their rights, even their freedoms. A person will come and run over you, and people don't sue. I've had into Omgaga Tassing, Omgaga Tassing Omsango. That's the kind of attitude you get amongst the lower strata of people. They say, after all. And the thing about creators, the creative people, the creative industry, many of them what would the word be? Melancholy. They live in their own world. They live in their own world, and many times detached from reality. So for you to find them in their element and get them to understand that what they're doing is a source of livelihood and therefore needs protected is work in progress. Like I always tell my students that if anything is worth stealing, then it's worth what? Protecting. If you buy land, what do?
Protect it, get the land title.
Get the land title, register it.
Yes, register.
If it is contested, what do you put? Caveats and what have you? I see when people buy empty plots, Bulindo and Sijui, which other suburbs that are not fully built up, you find a notice, not for what?
Sale.
Not for sale. So likewise with intangible assets, you should get out of your comfort zone and go and have it registered. Go and have your creations of the mind registered. It's very critical, because it's through registration that you can very easily enforce your rights if they are infringed. Two, when you register, if and when you register, then you are able to license third parties for you to earn from your creativity.
And apart from the symposium that you have annually, and also being one of the biggest firms, I think, in regards to intellectual property.
No, biggest, yeah. We have in 2019 we won Continental Award, Africa Legal Awards, run by Corporate Council of South Africa. We were the best intellectual property law firm in Africa in 2019. So in that regard, I think I'll take the accolades. We are big in intellectual property, and we've been deliberate, we've been intentional on it.
And you're helping many startups, many Ugandans, even worldwide, because you just said you have people who come in to register.
Yes, from China. Many of them are from China, EU. China, EU. China and EU mainly. And we do get many from the Middle East, but those are from, again, American companies, but through the what they call Middle Eastern Africa MEA offices in Dubai.
Okay. We'll just take a short commercial break and we'll be back. We're still having a conversation on intellectual property with a lawyer from KTA Advocates, Mr. Edgar Tavaro.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
The Ministry of Health informs the public that there are confirmed cases of Ebola in Uganda. We, however, urge the public not to panic. It is being managed. The Ministry of Health further reminds the public to be on the lookout for any persons who may show signs and symptoms of Ebola. These include high body temperature, abdominal pains, diarrhea, vomiting, bleeding from the body openings such as the nose, eyes, and mouth. Please inform the nearest health worker immediately if you see anyone with these signs and symptoms. To prevent Ebola from spreading further, please take the following preventive measures: regular washing of hands with water and soap, avoid handshaking and hugging, avoiding any contact with any suspected Ebola patients. Any person who dies suddenly should not be buried but reported to the nearest health worker or LC1 immediately. For further information, please call the Ministry of Health toll-free number on 0800 100 066 or send a free SMS to your report on 8500. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and World Health Organization.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello?
Hello?
This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey, you don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions, and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number, and you send it to her chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS, we talk about it?
Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera. Refrain from unnecessary engagements with strangers over the phone. This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
We bring you a fresh, well-researched program to help you identify opportunities for investment, job creation, growing your entrepreneurial skills, wealth creation, and social transformation.
We have a product that is ready for schools, supermarkets.
Create wealth, transform livelihoods. Every week, we showcase opportunities for creating new products and services.
I now harvest a lot of cocoa. When I harvest it, I sell. After selling, I put money in my project. I have two projects. One is for construction of my house. Two is for educating my children.
Excellence in innovation, the passion and drive to succeed, and the right mindset to grow your business. Create wealth, transform livelihoods. Brought to you by Operation Wealth Creation.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
"25 minutes to 10 p.m. You're still watching Good Morning Uganda Extra with me, Sharon Chomdisha, and Mr. Edgar Tavaro, discussing and talking about intellectual property. Now, Mr. Tavaro, Uganda signed the World Intellectual Property Organization Patent Law Treaty in 2000. Was this useful, or has it really helped in any way?
Oh, yes. There's an organization called the World Intellectual Property Organization. It administers what we call intellectual property, as you heard. It's based in Geneva, and under it are various treaties. that one, provide for interstate handling of applications. You know, intellectual property protection is territorial. You can only get protection in the territory in which is what? Registered. So the World Intellectual Property Organization provides a mechanism for registration in other countries at a minimal cost. The first cooperation on intellectual property was, I think, in 1864 or 1864, but it was mainly between European states. I think it's the Paris Treaty. The drive was industrialization and need to protect inventors. So in that regard, for Uganda, territories like Uganda that are playing catch up, yeah, it's a critical organization for us. They give technical expertise. They give technical expertise to territories like Uganda. But there are also Ugandans who are employed there. And it's a very big organization based in Geneva. Works very closely with the World Trade Organization. And between the two, there's the trade intellectual property aspects. The TRIPS agreement, what they call the TRIPS agreement, that is administered by both organizations. You'll agree with me that trade has become very critical for the modern state, access to markets, and also providing markets for foreign manufactured commodities or foreign manufactured goods. And in that regard, yeah, there was no way out of it. But time and again, the questions that keep arising is in those negotiations for such treaties, do we participate enough? Do our agendas, our needs, what would be the word be, our interests, are they mainstreamed at that level, or they remain peripheral?
What's our participation supposed to be then? Because you're asking, do we participate enough?
You know, when it comes to treaty negotiation, it's a long drawn-out process, and it's not a one-day event.
Yes.
It involves a lot of back and forth, movement, discussions over dinner, for those who take alcohol, over wine, and you go into caucuses, you know, agreeing on a final text, final wording of treaty provisions is something that is extremely, that is one, painstaking, two, tedious exercise. And I see the developed countries really put in a lot of effort and send different multidisciplinary teams for these negotiations. Unfortunately for us, like a country, we don't have that much resources to deploy, but we can always cooperate with like-minded people in East Africa, in the Far East, in Latin America. But you can only cooperate if you have identified each other's needs. And again, like I said, back and forth diplomacy.
When does one decide to either register in the country, regional, or even globally? When should one think of that, or when is it easiest? I know, like you talked about how people come from China and register in Uganda. And so when is that a possibility? When do you decide to do that?
That would be entirely, you sit down and see what is your business plan. The trouble is that many creators, and this is the mistake we make always, many creators also want to be businessmen.
What does that mean?
Okay, let me put it this way, in the simplest terms possible. There's a musician called Fresh Kid, right? A sensation.
Yes.
Can Fresh Kid manage his finances?
No.
Can Fresh Kid do the promotions?
No.
What is his work?
Entertain.
To compose, right?
Yes, compose.
Exactly. Now, if you go into debt collection, into promoting the shows. You see what is happening. So now, if you're licensed, you now start assigning, giving people rights on things to do. I mean, that's the simplest I can put it. I'll give examples, and I hope I'm not stepping on people's toes. There's a professor who invented and got a patent of the trouble is that when I get specific, people will be able to identify him.
But you haven't mentioned the name, so
you see, I'm going to say uncharitable things for purposes of learning.
Yes.
So this professor invented a drink.
Yes.
It's an alcoholic drink, but the alcoholic drink had other ingredients that acted as. I'm aware this is a family show, an aphrodisiac, and it was preferred by people in a certain age group who are already suffering those aspects of a little bit of sip of wine and you're up and running. So the professor also preferred to do the marketing and distribution, and would put on his truck and is delivering at what? At supermarkets, and he's calling, SMSing. At that time we didn't have WhatsApps. SMSing, is my payment ready? Now, that is not the business of an inventor. An inventor should actually create his invention, license it, register it, then license it. Sharon, Komjisha and company distributors. Here it is. Go distribute, get money, get your 20%, I get the 80%. You get another marketeer, marketing and sales, so you can't be everything. Ideally, the creator or the creative person should be back into the laboratories, back into their studios like this, creating more content, and the marketing and the sales and collection of monies, collection of debts be left to another what? But with the relationships. Now, that can only happen if you are registered. Remember, let's go back to our knowledge of land. You've acquired a land title, or you've acquired a huge chunk of land, 1 square miles, and you wish to lease it out to people. How will you lease it out to people, sublease to people, unless you're what? Registered. We get it,
So you can't pass the law, you can't bypass.
Well, I'm saying that's if anything is worth stealing, it's worth protecting.
Yes.
That's the simple rule. So now, for the creative person, it's critical that you sit down with your lawyer and take you through the whole process of licensing. But like I also said, National Social Security Fund. There is a gentleman there called Patrick Ayota. Terrific. He's a CFA, Certified Financial Accountant of the United States. Really, really transformational. I hope one day you can invite him to talk about some of the things. He's been part of these initiatives on NSSF, putting aside $10 million to support young innovators. Now, he has a very interesting take to these things, that, and this is the mantra we've had everywhere, that majority of startups in Uganda die after their first what? Yeah.
Yes.
It's the same thing in the United States, but the 85%. But his argument is that the big companies we see, the big brands we see, I don't want to mention them here on air because I'll be giving them free advertising. But the big brands we see were once startups. So out of 100%, maybe about 10 of them make it to what? To maturity. But nevertheless, you don't give up. You keep supporting what? And the beauty about tech, if we are deliberate, if we are intentional, if we are purposeful, we can create a large stock of that bit of economy to kickstart other activities. But I mean, look, in the United States, the biggest earners in the United States are music, movies, and tech.
Elon Musk and the likes.
Yes, take anything. I mean, the Amazons of this world, take apps. I mean, you go to the United States, by the China does 1.3 million patent applications every year. followed by the United States, which is at around 769,000 patent applications every year. Uganda, we are below 20 patents every year. 20 patents. And mind you, every app you have that is developed is subject of patent protection. We in the United States is fully patent, but here in Uganda we call it a utility model. All these apps you see that are being developed by these young people, they are subject to what? Then you hear people go and pitch. People go and pitch, and the pitch they are putting forward is not subject of protection.
So someone can take it.
It's happened before. It's happened before. Even you, Sharon, you can go and pitch for something that is subject to protection. It's a creative.
How much is protection? Because yes, because it sounds like it's a doable thing, but then people still have the mind of no, I'd rather pitch, get the money, then register afterwards. And of course, like you said,
I told you the creative mind, creative people are many times withdrawn from reality. They are in their own world, and and unfortunately for this country, many of these creative minds usually end in depression. They get so angry with the world, they are not earning from their creations. Because who recognizes you if you're out there and nobody knows you? Who recognizes you unless you go and patent your product? You go and protect your product. So it's back to your question, I can sum it all by saying, if it's worth stealing, it's worth protecting.
Yes, but by the time we have so many people who are at the risk of losing whatever they have created, then it might not just be that it's because people are not aware of the advantages of registering and doing all these things, but maybe, because if you're not telling me the price, then I'm thinking maybe the amount is one of also the reasons as to why people are not...
The amount of money. Transformation can be very slow. Transforming a people can be very slow. We're talking about land, Etaka, and titles. My parents were born in the present Chisoro district. Until about 5 or so years ago, there were hardly 10 or 20 land titles from Chisoro. Much of the land is customary land, and therefore they don't bother registering. Now, when you go to other places where there's communal land, I don't want to mention the areas in the country, lest I kick up a political storm, but the pastoral communities. President Museveni likes talking about his own community and how he has struggled to transform them for the last 36 years. So, even telling them to paddock, to put paddocks, called kusibasengenge, putting paddocks and controlling the numbers, selling off part of the herds to get a loan, the rural farmer scheme. The default says you sell part of the land, make it smaller, scientific farming. So likewise, even with our innovatives, our creative minds here, that transformation, that talk for transformation has to commence. It is slow, it is painful, but it can happen.
When is someone rejected from registering? Whether it's in regards to trademarks or copyright, when is the rejection?
Those are things that's a much deeper conversation, because when you are trademarking, there mustn't be an existing trademark on a similar product. There's what they call likelihood of confusion. Your komjisha.
Yes, chomjisha.
Chomjisha.
Yes.
Chomjisha.
Yes.
Imagine you're a great talk show host. That is my opinion. And you wish to register your brand, say an hour or a minute with Chomjisha. Then another one also goes to register a brand, a minute with Komjisha.
Oh, wow.
Likelihood of what? Confusion.
Yes.
So it's rejected on that ground. But there are many other grounds for rejection. There are many other. But you can also register a similar brand, Komjisha, Chomjisha, but Komjisha in something very unrelated. It could be, say, for argument's sake, you could go and register a fruit salad called Komjisha. Now, but however, there are other standards you set. If you have become a very big brand, a very big brand like, say, the KFCs of this world,
Yes.
the big brand like the
Cafe Javas of
Cafe
Uganda
Javas of this
now,
world.
Kenya.
Now you can't go and register, say, Cafe Javas for a nightclub. Maybe that's the same hospitality industry. You can't go and register Cafe Javas for, say, apparel, clothing, because they've become a big brand. It's a famous brand. And therefore, there's what they call trademark dilution. Any kind of trademark that would be associated with it becomes a dilution of their famous brand.
Okay, and then when it comes to trademark?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
trademark.
talked
No, when it comes to
copyrights,
patents.
and patents.
A patent is for an innovation. It's I should have gone in fair detail at the beginning. A patent is a license given to you by the state for you to exclusively use your technology. And others can only use that technology upon payment of a what? Of a fee. Now, it is for innovations. And innovations mean something new. You have invented something new. And for an innovation to be called, to be novel, or to be called an invention, it must be something that is not in existence before and is solving a contemporary problem and is industrially applicable. For argument's sake, M-Pesa. Previously, I mean, you couldn't transfer money over your mobile phone.
Yes.
So there came, you know, at that time you'd use a USS code, digital coding, you know, you use a USSD, and you know, for Airtel it's, you know, *18. Sorry, I'm using brands here now. Star, which is not supposed to be done on talk shows, but well, it's for purposes of illustration.
Yes.
I'm on Airtel. I've always had Airtel. I've had my number since the 90s when I was at school.
Wow.
You know, *185 #, send. Now it looks so mundane now, but at the time, it was created. It was new, and it was an inventive state. It was in other words, they were answering to a contemporary problem, and it was applicable in the industry, and that's what they call an inventive step. Or to use complicated English, uluzungu olungi, an inventive step is the disjuncture between the penultimate and the ultimate. What is in existence and what is it that you have brought different from what has been in existence?
Yes.
What has been brought? One of the examples I will give that caused a lot of controversy and still drives the debate. In 1980 in the US, there was a microorganism, a bacteria, that a biotechnologist got. Bacteria, ordinary bacteria.
Yes.
Just a little bit of modification in the laboratory, introduced it in the high seas, and that bacteria was able to break down oils in the waters. So it was an inventive state because it was able to lessen the environmental degradation arising out of spillage of oils from the ships on the high seas.
Wow.
So it's ordinary bacteria.
Yes.
It's in existence, you know it. But just a little modification in the laboratory. On its own, it couldn't break down the what? The oils. But a little bit of modification. So that is, you know, the structure between the ultimate and the penultimate. That is what they call the inventive step.
Because data is one of the, I think I had someone say data is a very big commodity now, but also looking at where we're going.
It's a very big commodity. If you are not into data, if you're not into data, you're losing out big time. Even this show here we're on, it can be best boosted through data.
Data, yes.
You know, the interaction between, it's what they call quantum physics. For quantum physics, it's simply the study of matter and breaking it down. Then there's what they call artificial intelligence.
AI, yes.
AI, no, using tech for performing what?
Yes.
Performing solutions that human beings would ordinarily do. Then you have what they call robotics. Then big data. So, I mean, you've if your internet is on, for instance, now, and the things we are discussing, don't be surprised when you open your phone and you go on any social media page where there are ads. The first ad that will turn up will be about the things we're talking about. Why? It's the interaction between the virtual world and the physical world.
Yes.
Now, big data is being used even to influence how we think. Even politics, the United States election is determined through big data.
Definitely.
Even now in the UK, people don't realize it. Now, when it comes to sales, when it comes to generating sales and marketing, big data.
Yeah, big data. But now with the technology and everything, the world is moving so fast. And like you said, I think some of the countries are still holding on to a transformation, like you said. It's going to take some time. But it looks like, for example, there's so many people who, maybe let me say a YouTube channel. You have your content on TikTok now, it's just flying left, right, and center. You're going to keep on, are you going to keep on suing and suing? Like what happens? Because this is where the world is heading. Information is a lot. Where you would read 7 books to understand something. Right now, in just tech, I might do that for tech, politics or something, and I have so much at my disposal. But then, like, are you going to keep on suing? Are you going to keep on, like, what happens to that, that sense of...
Fortunately, all these big data companies have user policies. The shrink wrap agreement where you click, I agree, what?
Which we never tend to read.
Thank you very much. That's where the rights are. That's where the rights are.
Yes.
Those things that we don't read. And no, the challenge we have with big data these days, because of so much data we're being bombarded with, we don't read. We just browse.
Yes.
We browse.
Yes.
And so we know so much, but we don't understand what we know. You get it?
Yes.
And I think we have to be deliberate. And you don't have to know everything. You just cut out your niche. And relearn, keep relearning and learning, what you have. Because, yes, it's good to have information. It's good to have knowledge. But do you understand it? So, for instance, the things I've been talking about, you knew, but did you understand them before we talked? I mean, that's the bit about relearning, And believe me, if you open your mind to a lifelong process of learning and relearning, believe me, you'll have a more fulfilling life than chasing material assets.
Okay. As an expert in this topic, what would you tell someone out there who is a creative? Yes. One,
the creative should go on the website of KTE Advocates and see what it has to offer, what it entails to register. 2, get in touch with any one of us. I'm not doing an advert. I'm simply saying that we are there to offer the service. Yes. 3, register for the next symposium next year. You really have to be part of that conversation. And, well, you've styled me an expert. Yes, I'm an expert in some way, but there are other experts as well. And every time you sit down with the different people, my, oh my, you get to learn things. You get challenged and sometimes the knowledge becomes obsolete,
Yes.
The things we knew 15 years ago. I was managing director of this company. I was its inaugural managing director. The producers will tell you the cameras we are using now. When we are at Nakasero, those cameras can now only work in the museum. I remember when we purchased the OB van. It was the most modern in Africa at the time, with the flywheel link and what. And we're talking big because, I mean, it was, you could detach the satellite, the upload, and go and fix it elsewhere, and the OB van remains as a studio.
Yes.
And you go and fix the other satellite uplink at Kololof to do a live event without having to drive the OB van there. But nowadays, even with mere phones, you can cover live event. So, the things, knowledge can become obsolete. So you have to keep learning, you have to keep opening your mind. Believe me, you're styling me an expert, but these young inventors, these creative people should keep coming and have these conversations. Because I'm also limited. I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I do not manage a bank. I don't write legislation, but we provide a bridge. We can provide a bridge and link up these people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edgar Tabara. Thank you for also expanding on the topic of intellectual property. I think one thing that I take away is if something is worth stealing, then it's worth protecting.
If anything is worth stealing, then it's worth protecting.
Yes, protecting. I love that. I hope you think about that as well once you get into your mind and you're developing and creating things. If anything is worth stealing, it is worth protecting. Thank you so much for watching. Good Morning Uganda Extra with me, Sharon Chomdisha. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.